Hello everyone, today we'll be talking about two CSS function and two CSS units. So the two CSS function we'll be talking about today are the variable function and the calc function, and we're going to be talking about the view height and the view width units for measurements as well. So before we move over to the other part of the video, the main part of the video, I would like to say this because I usually have this kind of issues stating this towards the end of the video, so I decided I'm going to say this at the beginning of the video. So I actually want to tell you all to please subscribe, give me a like if you truly like this video. If you don't like this video, don't just give me a thumbs down. I'd rather prefer you actually write a comment of what you actually don't like about this video. So reading this helps me to grow up this channel even better, and your likes, your comments, and your subscription actually supports me in this channel. So I would like you all to please share this if it's actually helpful to you, or if you think that there's someone out there that this particular content will be helpful to. So please do share it, subscribe, like, and comment. So I think I should be saying this at the beginning of the video than the end of the video. It's quite easier that way. Alright, welcome back. So this is actually my IDE, and this is just an empty project. So I'm going to be creating a new file right now. I'll come over here and I'll be creating a new HTML file. I'll call this index.html. So I have my HTML file here, and I really don't know what to call this for the title. Let's just say CSS functions. So that's going to be the title, CSS functions over there. So I'm going to be creating another file, which is my styles.css file. So I'm going to call this styles. So these are styles.css files. So I actually have a fun way of adding my styles.css to my index.html using the JetBrains. So I'm just going to click this, and I'm going to drag it and place it here, and that's all. So I've actually imported my style sheet to my index.html. So let's get started. So I must say that in this particular video, I don't really have any specific thing in mind to build. I actually just want to explain the two CSS function, which is the calc function and the CSS variable function. I also want to tell us about the view height unit and the view width unit, which we're going to be seeing very soon in this video. So don't really expect anything fancy. I just want to explain how to use some certain CSS functions. I'm going to create a little box at the center of the screen to explain this. So to do this, I'm first going to create a div. I'm going to create a div over here, and this div is going to be the parent div, and I'm going to create another div inside of this, which is going to be a child div. So this child div, I'm going to put this like at the center. I can just write center here at the center of my screen, and I'm going to be using the view width and view height to do all this, and the calc function as well. So just something very, very basic like this. So I'm going to give this a CSS class called main. I'm going to call this the main style, and I'm going to call this center. I'm going to call the center. All right, so I'll come over to my CSS, and I'm going to declare some certain variables now. And to declare a variable in CSS, you're actually going to create what we're going to write our roots over here. Then we're going to create the variables under this root over here. So to do that, we'll place a dash, then the name of our variable. So we're going to call the name of the variable in this case. I'm going to call this primary. So I'm going to call this primary, and I'm going to add a column. So I want the primary color of our application to be Okay, let's use red in this case. I want our primary color to be red. So I just set a variable there and I say the primary color should be red. I'm going to create another variable and I will say secondary, and I want our secondary color to be I'm out of colors right now, so I'm going to say, let's just say black. Oh, black is not good, so let's go pink. Let's try pink. So, and I'm just going to create another variable called others. Others should be, let's say green. Let's say green over here. So we could actually use variables for colors or for units and any other thing actually. So not necessarily colors. Like I could say our over here I add the semicolon there, and I could come here and I could say width. I would just say the width should be let's say 100%. So these are all our variables over here. So now that we've actually declared our variable at the top of our CSS file over here, we can go on to start creating nice stuff for our web page. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to call upon our main class, and I'm going to give our main class a background color. But before this, I would like us to take a look at our web page now. So I'm going to click on this icon here to open this on a Google Chrome. So we can just say that we have an empty HTML page with this title CSS function, and here we just have an empty div called center over there, nothing fancy. So if I should go back to my styles.css and add a background color, this time around I want my background color to take the secondary color of my application. So instead of me writing pink over here, I'm just going to write var, and I'm going to put this in the brackets because it's actually a function. So I'm going to say secondary, and my ID actually suggested that for me when I just typed S. So it goes secondary over there. Now you can see that our main background, the background of our main over here is actually using the secondary color, which is pink. So let's save this and load our IDE and load our browser again. So we could see that this is having a pink color right now. So what if we change this to others, and I save this file, come here, reload, we could see it's green, and we change this to primary, and we save this now, we come here, reload, and we can see it is red. So you might be asking, why do we have to do this? Why can't we just simply write pink over here? So if you're not new to programming, I'm very sure you understand why we're using variables for this. Because imagine a situation whereby we have so many pink in the application, so many places whereby we have the pink color, be it a text color or a background color or a button color. We use pink or red or green in so many places in our application, and all of a sudden the designer came around and say, okay, I don't want us to use pink for this application anymore. I want us to use magenta or something else. Now, it's really going to be a pain for you to go to every place where you have pink in your application to start changing it to magenta. In that case, this is where CSS variable really comes in handy. So you just simply need to change. I'm going to undo this. You just simply need to change the secondary color from pink to possibly magenta. You just need to change it to magenta, and that's all you need to do. Coming over here, refresh, you have the magenta color over here. So you don't need to go everywhere to change it. So this being said, we're going to go to the other part, which is actually the function calc. So we use the function calc for calculating things within CSS. So I'm sure that most of us might have come across a situation like this, whereby we want to create a box at the center of a page. Ordinarily, most people would do this like this. We're going to get the center class. So we come here, we could say center, and most people would first give this a width. We could say the width is 50%. and the height is, now this is where there could be a little problem. Sometimes when we want to give the height, let's just do this. Say the height is 50%. So we are going to give this a background. So we're giving this a background of, we're going to be using our variable over here. Then we're going to be calling this var, and we'll be giving this the secondary color. This actually not going to look so beautiful anyways, but just for you to understand what we're doing here. So we'll refresh this, and now we could see that we have our 50% width is being reflected here, but our 50% height, it's actually not reflecting over here. So that's one of the problem with percentage. So percentage is actually relative. It's actually relative. So our parent div right now, we've not actually specified the width of the height rather of our parent div. So this center really doesn't know the 50% of what exactly, because the height of the web page could actually be anything, most especially when we have scroll bar, it could actually be anything. So our center div doesn't really know the height of the 50% of what height exactly. So to prove that, to make this work now, we could say our main should be of a position of absolute, for instance, a position of absolute, and we want to give it a width of, let's say, 100%, and over here we're giving it a height of, let's say, let's just say 900 pixels. So when we save this now, let's see what's going to happen over here. Now we can see that our sensor now knows the height of his parent div, which is 900 pixel. So our sensor div can now say that, okay, you would actually ask me to give 50% of 900 pixel, and I can purely understand that, and this is the result of 50% of 900 pixel. So sometimes we really need to specify those things, and in this case I don't really think I need an absolute width there. If I should save this, it would still give us some results over here, because by default a div is a block element, it gives us 100% width by default. So, but the point of this is, when using percentage is usually relative to the parent container. So you're giving 50% of the parent container width, which is 100%, and we're giving 50% of the parent container height, which is 900 pixel. But the problem is, sometimes we don't really want to specify the height of our parent div. So how do we achieve that 50% right now? So let's take this away, and we're going to achieve our 50% in another way. And this is where we're going to introduce what we call the view height. So in this case, we're going to say our height is going to be 50 view height, and the unit of view height is actually the VH. So when we say 50 VH, it's going to take the height of the entire screen. Now let me refresh this. Now we can see. So 50 VH is going to take not the height of the web page or the height of the parent div or the parent container, but rather it's going to take the height of the viewport. So the height of the viewport actually starts from here to this particular place, and it's going to take 50% of whatsoever that height is. So let's see what happens when we minimize this particular page. So we can see that our viewport actually is reducing, and it keeps taking 50% of our viewport irrespective. So we keep doing this like this, it increases and it reduces depending on the viewport of the current viewport of the web browser. So that's just how the view height works. And the view width could also work in a similar way, like percentage too. We could have the view width, that's the VW for view width. So when we save this, it's going to give us some result. But right now, you're probably thinking that, oh, it's also giving us 50% of the parent container. No, I want you to watch carefully. I'm going to take this back to percentage, save it, and before refreshing this, I want you to take note of this part. So you're going to observe that this pink is going to shift a little. Now let's refresh. Watch. Now, did you observe that this actually shifts a little? Now, the reason why it shifts a little is the width, the percentage is actually relative to the parent container, and the parent container width is actually from here to here. That is the width of the parent container. But when we use view width, over here, it's not relative to the parent container, but rather it is relative to the view width, to the viewport of the browser. So it is actually taking its 50%, not from the parent container, 50% in quotes anyways, not from the parent container, but from the viewport, which is from here, the extreme of the screen, to the other extreme of the screen. Now, if we refresh this, you will see that it appears like it increases actually. So that's just how view height and viewport actually works. So that's been said about view height and viewport. We might want to achieve some certain things sometimes, whereby we want to place this particular pink div at the center of the screen. So to do that with viewport and view height and some other CSS function, we could just do this. Let's give this a fixed position, or an absolute position for now. So we're going to say that we're going to give it a position absolute in this case, and let's save this to see what we have over here. When we refresh this, why we're no longer seeing the green is simply because remember that whenever we have absolutes, this div leaves this place, takes itself out of here, and places itself somewhere that is equal to its parent container. So right now, we don't really have any div inside, any content in this particular place anymore. So that's why we're not really having the green. Now, if we should come here and just place a span, and that's a mistake, just place a span here and have a sample text over here and save this, and we'll refresh. Now we could see that we're having an absolute, and we cannot have the full width of the sample text because the sample text is under this container which has background green. But when we remove this, there is actually nothing, no need to even show this div. There is no content in it, so the background color won't even appear at all. So that's just, by the way, why we're no longer seeing the green container. So we actually want to put this particular div at the center. So how do we go about that? In some cases, if in a situation whereby we are using percentage, let's turn this to percentage now. Well, let's turn this to percentage. So that's dollar. We'll turn this to percentage. We'll save this and refresh. So we could see that we're still having this. In most situations, when we want to achieve this, we're going to say that we want to give this a left. We want to give this a left of, let's say, 50%, and we'll save this. We'll refresh. Now we could see it goes 50% to the left. Then we'll then say the margin should be minus 25%. Save this and we'll refresh this. Then we could see, okay, that's the margin actually. I'm supposed to say margin left. So the margin left should be minus 25%. Let's save this again. Now we could see that it's now somehow at the center. But this is actually not. Okay, let me just finish this up actually. So now we'll say top should be 50% again. When we save this, look at it. It goes this way. Then we'll say that the margin top should be minus 25%. We'll save this again and refresh this page. So for some reasons that didn't actually even work right. So I'm not going to debug why this didn't work right anyways, but this is just not a perfect way of doing something, so in my own opinion anyways, because there's actually a better way to do this with CSS calc function. So instead of using percentage, or instead of using these 4 lines of code to place a div at the center of our screen, we could just simply use the CSS calc function. So to do this with the CSS calc function, we'll simply go this way. We'll come over here and we'll say we want the left to be what? We use the CSS calc function. It goes this way. It's written as calc, and we have the two brackets to state that it's a function that we're going to pass in properties to this particular function. And the property we're going to pass into this is actually the calculation. So we want this to go to the left 50%. Then we'll say minus what? We want not just 50% actually. We want this to go to the left 50% minus 25%, and we'll save this and we go this way, and then we have that over there. It's actually giving us same results. Now I know it's really arguable that we could say we could still just give the left a margin of 25%. Yes, this is very true. We could give the left a margin of 25%, but there are some cases whereby we might just really need to make some sort of complex calculation. So let's say that we are actually not using percentage for this width, that we are actually using 200 pixel, and we want this to appear at the center of the screen. You could tell that this is not the center of the screen, and we don't really know what percentage is going to take this div to the center of the screen when it is 200 pixel. And even if we should use a percentage to take it successfully on this screen, when we resize the screen, we might find out that there might be some kind of variation. Now looking at this right now, it's appearing like the div is almost at the center, but when we maximize it, it's totally not at the center. So using percentage for a thing like this is definitely not the way to go. So we have to use a CSS calc function for that. So to get that, we can say calc again. We could say calc, and we open this parenthesis. Then we could say 50% minus then the half. When we have 50%, it takes it to the right-hand side, and we just have it not being at the center. Then we want to shift it back to the left-hand side a bit. We want to shift half of the width to the left-hand side. So we're going to say that's minus 100 px for this. So this is 50% minus 100 of this width to the left. So we're going to save this and refresh this. Now we can see that our div is appearing very well at the center. We can also apply something. Let's say, okay, let's just give this a width of 500 pixel. 500 pixel. So we're going to change this now to 250 pixel, and let's say the height is also 500 pixel. So we're going to give it a top of calc. Then we'll say 50. Let's use percentage here first. We'll say 50% minus 250 pixels. So we're going to save this now and refresh this page. Now we could see that this is just very well at the center of our screen. At the center of our screen, at the center of our viewport. But in a situation whereby, let's take a look at this. Let's go to our HTML. I'm just going to make something very, very rough over here. I'm going to create an h1 tag, and I'm going to write sample text. Sample text. So let's say I'm going to duplicate this several times, save it, come over here and refresh this. So now you could see what I'm talking about. We want this to appear at the center of the screen no matter what. So when we have the sample text, now we have our green background back again, and we could still see that when we scroll, we don't see our pink div anymore. That is because absolute is actually still relative to the other parent container. So this scrolling would still somehow work over here. So when we have this, we could fix this by using fixed position actually. So if we should refresh this now and we come over here, it's actually not scrolling anymore. But let's see what happens when we use let's just see. So we use 50 view height over here, and here for the left we use 50 view width. Now you observe for anything of a horizontal calculation we use view width, anything of a vertical we use view height. So that's just the way it goes. When we save this now, we save this, we're still going to now have it at the center of the page, but it's not really relative to this div anymore, but rather it is relative to our viewport, our actual viewport, not the height of the entire screen like this, but it's actually being relative to the height of the viewport. That is from this part of the screen to this part of the screen over here. If I should change this back to the percentage that we have before, you will observe that there will be a difference in the height of and the width of this particular pink container. So let's refresh this and see. Can you see that? So that's the difference between using view height and view width in most of the situations. So this is just how to go about it for the CSS calculation and the CSS variable. So instead of us to say if there are several places whereby we're going to use 50 view width, we could just use our width here to the 50%. We're going to use, well, let's just call this width here 50 view width. 50 view width here. So instead of us writing 50% here, we're just going to say 50. We're going to say var, add another function here, then we'll say the width. So I'm going to copy this here and I'm going to paste this here. So we're going to save this and it's still going to give us the same results. So this is to prove that the variables are not just working for the primary, second, for the colors alone, but it's also working for units as well. So when we refresh this, we could see that this actually goes down, and I'm going to find out why that's actually happening. Okay, so I just figured it out. So remember that our variable is actually 50 view width, and now we're using view width for something that is meant to be view height. So that is really not going to work correctly like we expected it to work. So I'm going to add another variable here, and I'm going to have this, oh, what am I typing? I'm going to have this over here. So that's good. So now we're going to take, instead of having the 50 view width here, we're going to height for this. So I'll save this now, and this should go well now. Very good. So if there's any place whereby we know we're going to keep on using a specific unit, we could just assign a variable to that unit, a CSS variable to that unit, and we could use it anywhere in our application. So that just it for now, and if you have any question on this, you could actually put it on the comment section. I know that's not actually the most beautiful application that you've seen, but the essence of this particular video is just to explain how to use the CSS variable, how to use the calculation function, and also how to use the view height and the view width as well, and the difference between the view height, view width, and percentage. So take note, there are some cases whereby it's not really ideal for you to use a view height or view width. You just need to use percentage, or you need to use some other units like pixels and the rest of them. But there are some cases whereby you just need to use the view height. It's just actually the best thing for you to use in those cases. So that's just it, and that's all for this video, and I'm going to see you all next time. So one more time, remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you have any question, please put it down in the comments below. Goodbye.